I did some interviews with some local photographers in my area, and I asked them their story of how they had started. And I realized that you guys don't have too much of a background on me. How did I get to where I am? So I'm gonna take you through a walk down memory lane. I've been a wedding photographer since 2015, and there's a lot of things that I have learned. At the time when I was looking for a wedding photographer, my husband and I were on a tight budget, so trust me, I know what that's like. A month before my wedding, and I still don't have a wedding photographer, and the photographer that I absolutely adored had, well, actually, let's back up. So I had sent a few inquiries to photographers whose style I absolutely loved. I had no idea what wedding photography cost. I think I was one of the first from my friends to also get married. So like I said, no idea. And a couple of wedding photographers did not even get back to me. I sent some inquiries, nothing. There was one photographer whose style I also really liked. I was really hoping that I could get them to photograph my day. They had just sent me an email, and they had just responded to what their prices were. Obviously I couldn't afford it, so that's where I didn't talk to them. One photographer did get back to me. I also really liked her portfolio, and she had photographed some childhood friends' wedding of mine. I contacted her. She had not told me her price, and she had just asked for a no pressure consultation. And what the heck, I'm always up to meeting people. So I met her at one of the local Starbuckses. She had brought a few of her wedding albums, and we had gone through her portfolio. Obviously, I'm falling more in love with her as time goes. And then it gets to like what her prices are, and I nearly threw up. I was like, oh my God, this is so expensive. I cannot afford this at all. Yeah, so I thanked her for her time, and I went back and told my then fiance, now husband, her prices. So it was in that moment where my husband had, bless his heart, wanted to find a photographer, and he found one for $500 on Kijiji. And it was obviously such a drastic price. Being quoted $3,000 for a 6-hour day versus $500 for like an eight-hour day. Of course, it looked like a great deal, but after meeting this person second, like it was just not the same vibe that I had with the other photographer. There was no mention of a contract, and it just didn't seem as professional. So we kind of had to go back to the drawing board because my husband and I didn't agree on what way we should go. Fast forward to a month before my wedding, I get a call from this photographer, and she was like, hey, just wanted to follow up. Did you find a wedding photographer? And I felt at that point that I had to have the hard conversation, kind of like breaking up with an ex-boyfriend. Yes, I did tell her that her prices were out of our price range, that we loved her work, and that just unfortunately we wouldn't be able to make it work. I wasn't asking for a deal or anything like that, but she had offered me at that point in time, she said, hey, you know what, like, actually, I don't have anything booked. This is about a month away. Instead of offering you a full wedding day, what I could offer you is an hourly rate to come for like an hour, maybe two, just to cover these really important moments. So that's exactly what we did. It ended up that we got some extra money on our wedding day. We got blessed by obviously a lot of friends and family, and one of our family members were like, hey, you know what, we're gonna pay for 2 free hours with this photographer. So we're able to have her for 4 hours of the day, and the photos, as you can see, they're magic. I'm going on 10 years of being married, and how timeless are my photos. Anyhow, at that point in time, I was working a sales job. I was selling vehicles, and I went away on my honeymoon, came back, and the photographer had already finished editing the photos. And the experience that I had with her was going to her studio, seeing the photos on a slideshow with music, and just her professionalism and how she handled it just made me mind blown. And I guess I realized at that point in time that it was something that I wanted to do too. not because of the money. There was just something about storytelling that I just loved photography. I always like to say that with me being dyslexic, I can't write worth anything. Like, I can't really write to save my life, but I can tell your story through a lens. And selling vehicles was not my life purpose. It was not where I found passion, I guess, but I loved being able to document the little in-between moments and realizing that those moments are so special. So the next year I decided to go to photography school, and I became really good friends with this wedding photographer. I ended up graduating a year later and a second shooting for her, and then I ended up photographing her youngest son's wedding, and it was so nerve-wracking, but it was great. And she ended up retiring, but the name of her business was Allure Photographers. Sound familiar? Yeah, so that's kind of why Allure is kind of tied to my photography studio brand. When she had finally decided to retire, she didn't retire from working, but she did retire from being a photographer, and she had asked me if I had wanted to buy her business. It was at the time when I second shot for her, I wasn't allowed to post the photos that I had worked with her because they were under her company. So I did kind of see some value in that, as well as me purchasing her business. I got to purchase all of her wedding contracts and really see how she broke down the day. If you're shooting a wedding for somebody, you are really providing them with a full service. On average, I probably communicate with my client prior to a wedding. This is not including the consultation or the engagement session. I probably am putting about 10 to 12 hours minimum of work between making emails with them to answer their questions, helping them plan their timeline, kind of figuring all these things out. And if you're just showing up to a wedding with none of this information, blindsided and just waiting for your client to hand you a timeline, I'm not throwing any shade at all. This is not that type of channel. What I'm trying to say is it's not going to elevate you to being that, that photographer that is known for offering excellent service and is booked multiple times a year. So one of the things that you're gonna wanna do is get a shot list, figure out all the photos that are included in a day. Now, I have a wedding shot list that I'm going to include in the link where you can go and download it. I'll have a description below. This shot list is what I had used for many, many years when I first started. It was one of the things that I purchased from my wedding photographer. This shot list kind of gives you an idea for what the whole day looks like from start to finish, from getting ready until the end of reception. What you're gonna wanna do is figure out how long it takes you to photograph each of those things, so that when you meet with your client and you're asking them about even wedding coverage, let's say you're wanting to do your coverage by the hour. I personally do mine by event. So it's from getting ready to the start of reception. Now, if you're meeting with that client and you're offering an hourly rate, then it's great to kind of ask them what is most important to them so that you can kind of have a feel for how many hours you can quote for the job. That's what I would recommend. So one of the things that I go and offer my clients is not only that checklist, but I also have a 20-page PDF, breaks down each of those categories that's in that checklist. And it gives them so many things to think about that they wouldn't have thought about. And ever since that I've been giving this PDF, it has helped so much with so many of my clients. They have absolutely loved it. It also has fewer questions, like they come back with fewer questions. Not that I don't like answering questions, but it's always really annoying last minute to go and rearrange a bunch of things in the timeline. So the sooner that they know this information and how to go and plan this either on their own or with a wedding planner, the better it is for you and for them to all in all have a great experience. Hopefully this wasn't too much of a ramble on. Thank you for tuning in and for watching, and we'll see you next time.